Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordy and Glory video. In today's episode, we are going to be doing another unit review, this time taking a look at the Rough Riders. In case you've not seen one of these videos before, what I like to do is give an overview of the unit, going through its stats, war gear and abilities. Then we move on to a deep dive looking at the advantages and disadvantages and how you can use it on the battlefield. And then lastly, we give it a score out of 10 and a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And so without further ado, let's ride for Ruin and dive straight into this. Starting off with the unit overview, the Rough Riders are a fast attack choice. They come in squads of a minimum of 5, but you can take up to 10 models in each unit. They are designed to be a fantastic close combat unit, combining speed with a very potent punch. Unlike the other combat units of the Guard, like Ogryns and Bulgryns, they are, however, much more fragile. If you're looking for a tanky combat unit, you'll want to go down the Abhuman route. If you're looking for a more fragile Glasshammer style unit, Rough Riders have got you covered. Each Rough Rider comes with a movement of 12 inches, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 4+, strength 4, toughness 4, 2 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 6, and a 4+ save. As is tradition, the Rough Rider Sergeant is basically identical, except he does come with an extra attack and an extra leadership. Every model in the unit is equipped with a las gun, las pistol, hunting lance, and frag grenades. The las weapons and grenades have a standard profile, the same one that you'll find throughout the Guard Codex. But the hunting lance is really interesting and unique because it comes with 2 different profiles. The first one is the frag tip. This is a melee weapon at strength user, AP -1 and 1 damage. But each time an attack is made with this weapon, a successful hit roll scores 2 additional hits. To be clear here, this is not a, if you get a 6 to hit, it explodes. This is not exploding 6s. This is just exploding hits. And it's not even single exploding. It is double exploding hits. If you roll a 3+ with your Rough Rider with a frag tip, that becomes 3 hits. It's very nice. With each Rough Rider packing 2 attacks base, and with those attacks hitting at a good weapon skill, it is not uncommon for each guy to generate about 6 attacks each. The frag tip is your anti-horde option. It is great for scything down huge numbers of light and medium infantry. On the other hand, the melter tip is a brilliant anti-armor choice. It again is a melee weapon, but this time it is strength +2 and is AP -4 and is a flat damage 3. It doesn't get any kind of exploding hits, but that's okay because each individual attack packs a much bigger punch than the frag tip. Rough Riders also come with a couple of war gear options. Firstly, for every 5 models in the unit, 1 model's hunting lance can be replaced with 1 goad lance. The goad lance has a really cool profile and it sits somewhere in between the melter tip and the frag tip in terms of power. It is strength +2 like the melter tip, but it's only AP -3 and it only does 2 damage rather than 3. However, each time attack is made with this weapon, a successful hit roll does score 1 additional hit. So it's not quite as explodey as the frag tip, but it still does generate extra hits. It also comes with a unique ability. Each time an attack made with this weapon is allocated to a vehicle model, that model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. What's really wacky about this ability is it does not require you to hit to start generating mortal wounds. It specifically says when the attacks are allocated. So the moment you take a Rough Rider with a goad lance and you go against an enemy vehicle and you say, I'm going to put both of those Rough Riders attacks into that vehicle, before you then roll to hit, the vehicle instantly suffers 2 mortal wounds. And then you start rolling to see what damage the goad lance does on top of that. Now, before you all get really excited and decide that you're going to equip entire armadas of Rough Riders with goad lances, you've got to remember that it is only 1 in every 5 models in the squad can take them. So even if you take a big 10-man squad, you can only take 2 goad lances. On top of this, it's important to note that the goad lance is not an extra tip for the hunting lance, it is an entirely separate weapon. You have to pick if you want the more versatile hunting lance or the more anti-vehicle goad lance. The other war gear option that Rough Riders have is the Rough Rider Sergeant can be equipped with a power saber. Now, the power saber does not replace his hunting lance. He takes it in addition. So there's basically no point to never take it. And it's actually a pretty good sword as well. It is a melee weapon, which is strength +1, AP -3, so far so power sword, but then it comes with a damage of 2. That's pretty nice. And also, each time the bearer fights, it makes 1 additional attack with this weapon. So actually, even if you are running a hunting lance, you basically get a free power saber attack off your sergeant anyway, which actually bumps him up to 4 attacks base, 3 with the lance and 1 with the saber. Moving on to the abilities of the Rough Riders, they come with 2 really good ones. The first one is Horse Masters. This unit can ignore any or all modifiers to its move characteristic, advance rolls, or charge rolls. Considering this is a fast yet fragile melee unit, having the capability to ignore anything that's going to slow you down is a pretty good bonus. But the real big news is the Scithing Momentum ability. In the fight phase, if this unit made a charge move this turn, then until the end of the phase, add 2 to the strength characteristic of models in this unit. This is truly massive, and it takes the Rough Riders from being an already fundamentally good unit and just boosts them up into S tier. It means that your hunting lances when you charge are not strength 4, they're actually strength 6, which means any kind of light, medium, or even heavy infantry that you come across, you are more than likely going to be wounding them on 3s. And if you're coming across a guardsman equivalent or termagants or any other kind of small light infantry, you're going to be wounding them on 2s. It also means that your melter tips go up to strength 8 on the charge, meaning that even super heavy units like Imperial Knights are not safe from the charge of the Light Brigade. All of this combined, the impressive stat line, the good weapons, and the fantastic abilities is going to cost you 20 points per model, meaning that a minimum squad of Rough Riders is going to set you back 100 points, and a maximum squad is going to set you back a fairly spicy 200 points. But that covers the overview, and I think we can all agree that Rough Riders are bringing a lot to the table. But now let's get into the deep dive and take a look at the pros and cons of this unit. Straight off the bat, it is clear that Rough Riders pack a very powerful melee punch. Just from their basic stat line, you have got a model that can easily bring to the table 6 attacks with its hunting lance, which is just going to start scything through all sorts of light and medium infantry. You charge these guys into a unit of orcs, even without any support, and they're probably going to cut most of them down without breaking a sweat, because they've got the strength to get past the toughness 5, and they've got the AP to just cut straight through those t-shirt saves. And when it comes to anti-tank capabilities, between the melter tips and the goad lances, a full squad of Rough Riders, again without much support, should easily be able to take down an Imperial Knight. That is a 200 point unit toppling a 400 plus point one. But the best thing is that you don't need to rely upon that basic Rough Rider profile, because they can be buffed up into the stratosphere. Because they've got the core and platoon and regimental keywords, they can receive orders from officers and commissars. That's right, you can tell your Rough Riders to fix bayonets, and suddenly they go from hitting on 3s to hitting on 2s. And those hunting lances go from AP1 and AP4 to AP2 frag tips and AP -5 melter tips. And if you've got some sort of senior officer nearby, they'll benefit from his reroll 1s to hit aura. And if you've got a command squad nearby with a regimental standard, oh look, they'll get reroll 1s to wound as well. And when you add all this together, you realize how bonkers Rough Riders actually are and how incredible their damage output is. Because let's say you're taking a squad of 10 of them and you're going to ride down an enemy unit of light infantry. Maybe it's a big block of orcs. Maybe it is a big old chittering horde of Tyranids. Well, you're going to be getting 20 attacks to start off with, but because you've got double exploding hits, you're actually going to be getting 60 attacks. You're going to get 60 successful hits because you're hitting on 2s thanks to fixed bayonets, and you're rerolling 1s thanks to senior officer, so you don't miss. And then you're going to be against those toughness 3 infantry wounding on 2s because you're naturally strength 4, but thanks to Scithing momentum, you get +2 on the turn that you charge, it's strength 6. So now you're wounding on 2s. And if you've got a command squad nearby, you're wounding on 2s, rerolling 1s. So you're not going to miss with any wounds either. And then it's like, okay, and I'm AP -2, which against most light infantry forces is going to be enough to just take away their armor save. And it's like, right, so my 10-man squad just picked up 60 Guardsman equivalent models. And if you go into something that is toughness 3 but happens to have an invulnerable save of some kind, maybe it's Scithing infantry or some mad lad is still running Harlequins, then you'll find that, okay, I've got my 60 hits, I've got my 60 wounds, they're going to get a 5+ invulnerable save. Oh, I've still done 40 wounds to them. That's 2 full-man Scithing bricks just deleted in one go. That is 4 maxed out troops of Harlequins just sent back to their laughing god. And you get similar results when you start going up against toughness 4 or toughness 5 infantry as well, like orcs. It is no problem for a 10-man unit of Rough Riders to delete an entire 30-man mob of boys without even breaking a sweat. And I know some people are going to say to me, but Mordu and Glory, when are you ever going to have reroll 1s to hit and reroll 1s to wound nearby to these fast assault cavalry units? They're going to be charging off and you're not going to be anywhere near your officers. And I am skipping ahead slightly here, but I don't see Rough Riders as an assault cavalry unit. I see them as a counter-attacking force. They're too fragile to just be yeeted across no man's land. They'll never make it. They'll all die on the way in. There's no difficulty for 40k armies to deal with a bunch of toughness 4, 4+ save models. They're just going to get scythed down World War I style. But if you keep them back in reserve, not strategic reserve, just back in your deployment zone a little bit, behind some landslide blocking terrain, you're going to find that when your enemy assault units come barreling in, they're going to be perfectly placed to countercharge them and more than able to take advantage of your supporting officers. Speaking of which, not only do Rough Riders benefit from your run-of-the-mill Castellans and command squads, but they also greatly benefit from the Lord Solar Leontus. Because they have the core keyword, they benefit from the full whack of his Lord Solar commander ability, meaning that the Lord Solar in the command phase can give Rough Riders full rerolls to hit and rerolls to wound for the turn. This takes their damage output, which was already in the stratosphere, and launches it straight into outer space past beyond the known galaxy. To give you an example, if you take a 10-man squad of Rough Riders and tell them to fix bayonets and then give them the full Lord Solar rerolls to hit and to wound, then they can charge into an Imperial Knight. And they are going to get 21 melter tip attacks. And they're going to hit with all 21 of those because they're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. And then they're going to wound that knight on 4s, which means they're going to get about 10 wounds. But wait, they get full rerolls to wound. So they're actually getting about 15 wounds through on that knight. And because they are AP -5, thanks to the fixed bayonets order, the Imperial Knight doesn't get its invulnerable save, doesn't get any kind of armor save because they can only use their ion shields against shooting. And that means you get 15 wounds straight through. And each one of those wounds is 3 damage because of the melt tip. So you can topple over a knight in one go and do 45 wounds to it. You don't even need the 10-man squad. It just secures it, but you could do the same thing with a 5-man squad and it would basically result in the same thing. You're going to be doing 20+ wounds to a knight in one go. It's just bonkers how a little 100-point squad, if you just take 5 Rough Riders, has a good chance of toppling a Titanic unit. And if you take a 10-man squad, you can almost topple 2 in one go. Now, the Lord Solar is a very obvious choice for buffing up your Rough Riders, but there is another character that they pair strangely well with as well, and that is Iron Hand Strachan. You see, he has the ability Cold Steel and Courage, and each time this model issues an order to a unit until the start of your next command phase, each time model in that unit makes a melee attack, an unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically wounds the target. It's not a huge buff, and it's not one that I would directly build into my army list when I was thinking of taking Rough Riders. But if you happen to be a Catachan player and you were taking Strachan anyway, then there's nothing wrong with factoring it into your game plan and understanding that it is an extra little bit of damage output that you can stack onto your cavalry. Now, all of this sounds fantastic, and I know a lot of people will be thinking about including Rough Riders in their army, and they would be right to do so. But it is important to know that there are some disadvantages to these horsey boys. Firstly, 20 points per model is actually kind of pricey. Now, I know there are going to be some Custodes players out there whose eyes have just started twitching at that comment, but in terms of Imperial Guard, it is a lot to pay per model. If you start spamming these guys and your intention is to include a full 30 of them, 3 maxed out squads, you're going to find it eating up space in your list very quickly. And considering that you are paying this premium price for them, they are incredibly fragile. Toughness 4 with a 4+ save and 2 wounds might seem pretty durable in Guardland, but to the rest of the 40k factions, it is nothing. It is a laughably fragile profile. To put it into perspective, that is the same defensive profile as a Black Templar Primaris Neophyte, and those guys are considered woefully expendable to the Crusaders. Another big problem with Rough Riders is, despite the fact that they are pretty fast, they're actually kind of difficult to maneuver around the battlefield. This is because they are cavalry, and therefore they cannot breach through terrain like infantry, meaning they have to go around ruins and other obstacles. Now, bearing in mind that on competitive 40k boards, pretty much every piece of terrain is some form of L-shaped ruin or another, this does create a big problem, and it tends to mean that your Rough Riders are going to get funneled down kill zones where they're going to be torn apart by enemy firepower. I know we've talked about the pure damage output of a 10-man squad being able to knock over entire night houses in a single blow, but the reality of the situation is that if you take big 10-man squads of Rough Riders, they're probably going to be easily spotted by the enemy. You're going to struggle to hide them behind ruins, and they are going to get shredded before they ever get near any of those Imperial or Chaos Knights. One final small problem with Rough Riders is they do not benefit from the Born Soldiers Regimental Doctrine. Born Soldiers is an army-wide buff. That means when you roll a 6 to hit in the shooting phase, it automatically wounds the enemy. This is a brilliant way of stacking loads of damage onto your opponent because it cuts out the whole having to roll to wound part of the attack sequence. Because Rough Riders are a primarily melee unit, they are not going to benefit from Born Soldiers. Now, some people might say that's not such a big deal, at least the rest of my army is going to benefit from it. And that is true, but you have to remember that these guys are kind of pricey. Even taking 1 or 2 squads of them is going to take up about 10% of your overall army points. And if 10% of your force is not benefiting from your regimental doctrine, then it means that you're taking a slightly less efficient list. You could get round this by taking other regimental doctrines like Swift as the Wind or Recon Operators, ones that really do benefit your Rough Riders, but then you're missing out on Born Soldiers, which is really, really good, and it's hard not to take such a fantastic buff for the rest of your army. Kind of puts you in a rock and a hard place as a player. But to be honest with you guys, these are all very small disadvantages, and there is a super easy way of getting around it. Don't overspec into your Rough Riders. Take 1 or 2 small squads to support the rest of your army. If you only take a couple of 5-man squads, then you're not breaking the bank and you're not taking points away from other areas in your list that might need it, like fire support from your Russes or more infantry for taking objectives. The smaller 5-man squads are going to be much easier to hide, and they can take advantage of obscuring terrain, which means that their fragility stops being such a problem. Smaller units tend to be much easier to maneuver in general, and Rough Riders are no exception for this. You're going to find it much easier to hop a 5-man squad from one piece of cover to the next, rather than having big 10-man squads with these snaking columns of cavalry all over the board. Like I said before, these guys are not designed for mass cavalry charges. They're not going to make it to the other side. They are much better being used as smaller squads that can sit in and around your army behind some obscuring terrain, waiting for those enemy assault units to make contact with your line and then moving out and counter-charging them. But that covers the deep dive, and now the only thing left for us to do is to give them a score out of 10. And I can confidently say that they are a straight up 9 out of 10 unit. One of the best options in the new Guard Codex. Quite frankly, they are a top tier fast melee unit, and they really do fill a gap in the Guard roster. They bring speed and combat to a force that is traditionally slow and shooting. The only reason I didn't give them the 10 out of 10 is because it would have been nice for them to be able to pull off a mass cavalry charge and for it to be effective outside of a themed or narrative game. But other than that, as little 5-man squads running around, they are probably perfect. But what do you guys think? Are you a fan of the Rough Riders, or do you prefer our more traditional combat choices like Ogryns and Bullgryns? Are they your favorite fast attack choice, or are you still looking at the Sentinels and Hellhounds? Let me know down in that comment section below. If you enjoyed today's video, then make sure you smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. If you found today's video particularly helpful and you would like to see more videos like this, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. One of the big perks you get from being a channel member or Patreon is access to the Mordy and Glory Discord, an online community of over 900 active members. We're always talking about tactics, strategy, army lists, painting, hobbying, and we've even got a pretty spicy meme section in there as well. And before we go, I just want to take a moment and say a big thank you to all of the latest channel members. So thank you to That One Guy, Hide in a Hole, Niall Jenkins, J Red Mage, Lokiv, James Stevens, Lucas Jacobs, and Adventurer Primefire. Thank you guys for doing your part. I also want to do a shout out to the latest Patreon supporters as well. So a big thank you to Samuel Ball Brew, Dylan Mosley, Valkulan, Franklin Cooper, Eric, Jeremy, and Starjude. And last but certainly not least, I would like to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a massive, heartfelt thank you to Alan Blunt III, Bonbon Vert, Phil French, Ross Miller, Swordfish Trombone, Alex Dengal, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and August Varney. Thank you guys for your very generous support. It is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordy and Glory full time now. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.